Hi, everyone. Welcome to GoLean6Sigma.com's webinar called Learning to Lead, Leading to Learn, an interview with Katie Anderson and Isao Yoshino. I'm Tracy O'Rourke, and I'm with GoLean6Sigma.com, and joining me to help moderate is my colleague Elizabeth Swan. And we are so excited about this webinar because we get to have another visit with Katie Anderson and Isao Yoshino. We saw them last year at Katie Anderson's Japan study tour. So let me tell you a little bit about these two amazing people. Katie is a leadership coach and consultant. She owns kbjanderson.com consulting. Like I said, she does Japan study tours outside of the pandemic that are awesome, and we would highly recommend that you go to experience Japanese culture, to see Japanese organizations, not just businesses, but schools and other, and you can really get a feel for the experience. And you get to meet Mr. Yoshino, who is also joining us today. Mr. Yoshino has 40 years of experience with Toyota. He was John Shook's mentor, and he is a very humble leader. He didn't even want me to call him a master sensei today, but I really see him as a master sensei. How are you guys doing today?
We're great, Tracy.
I'm fine.
Well, these two have put together a rich tapestry of a book really talking about Mr. Yoshino's experiences as a Toyota leader and really bringing out some really wonderful reflections. And we are here to talk about that today. I'm so excited. So first of all, congratulations on the book. Woohoo! All right. So exciting. And so that is a huge accomplishment. And we just wanted to ask you a few questions around the book, if that was okay. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen so we can see your faces now.
Great.
Wow, that's way better. So first of all, what we want to know is, now that the book is complete, what was it like to collaborate on this together? Tell us a little bit about that experience. Who wants to go first? Katie?
I'm going to nominate Mr. Yoshino to go first, because I'm curious to hear this. So I'm usually the one asking Mr. Yoshino the question. So I'll ask you another, Isao. What was it like to work together on this book?
Well, actually, this is really the first time in my entire life to work together with American and lean leader. So it was, I did not know what Katie was thinking about it, writing a book. But when we met, we talked about a little bit about, some article, put it together in make a small booklet, something like it. And then we met many times, and directly face to face, and also through emails and everything. And one of the best thing about my journey together with Katie is that she asked many good questions, which never happened to me before with Japanese people. And so there are so many things I learned from the way she asked questions to me. So sometimes in Japanese people say, I ask some question and yes and no answer. See, so it's a very simple question, simple answer. But when Katie asks some question, it's more profound. And also she, on answer something, then she asks another question to my answer. So it's rotating, it's keep going on and on. So then it makes me feel like I'm going back to my old memory, which I just already sealed down in my memories. I didn't want to come back. I want to come back. I don't know about this. It's already buried down somewhere. But it's now she helped me out to open up the lid and find something new from the old memory. So that is one of the most important things. And when I look back, so which means a lot to me.
So reflecting on your own experiences even more. And now we know Katie could probably be an attorney as well, but we like her as a leadership consultant instead.
Not interrogation. It was not interrogation. It was partnership and shared learning. That's an important thing as a coach and a mentor. You don't want to interrogate. You want to help draw out. But yeah, it's been such, throughout our relationship, Mr. Yoshino has told me that he's appreciated my questions and my interest in learning from him and curiosity. And that is so meaningful to me. just sort of validate sort of who I am and how I show up, but also to be able to help this wonderful, wise leader to, as he said in the past, to relearn things about his experiences in a different way than he had in the past. And so it was just a really special relationship that I never thought would come out of what I thought was going to be a once in a lifetime get together in Nagoya in April of 2015, and has turned into a really one of my most important relationships in my life. So thank you.
It was almost like it was meant to be that you met, because you were moving to Japan and then you just so happened to meet him at a conference and you got his number. Like, how apropos, right?
Serendipity for sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I have a question for you, Mr. Yoshino.
Yes.
So a lot of conversation, and as you said, it pulled up memories for you, and was an experience like you hadn't had before. So if you think about that series of conversations and how this all evolved, what would you say was one of your biggest discoveries through your conversations with Katie?
Well, actually, that's a good question, because it's, as I said earlier, the Japanese people don't ask so many questions, and we don't give a long answer. So this is the first time in my entire life that somebody else just asked me questions, and lots of questions. All the questions she asked me is something new, even though it's a very simple question. But sometimes we Japanese people expect the interviewer or the partner you're talking to, that they read our mind. Sometimes we don't explicit and we don't talk much about it. But she asked me a very simple question, but it's actually very profound. So when I try to answer her questions, I have to dig down. I have to go back to my memory and dig down more and try to find what I think was important, what I think is important now. So he made his question, her question just helped me out to dig down more about my experience, and a little bit more deeply and more meaningfully. So it's very, very interesting, and to listen to her questions and try to find the answer, which I don't usually come back so often. So it's a new discovery of my past. And you cannot change my past, but I can not change, but I can find something new meaning of my past experience. So it's really, really rewarding. And so to answer your questions, the question, asking question is so important. That is the beginning of deepening the relations with each other. So that is one of the many things I learned from her questioning.
Was there any one memory that stood out for you that came up?
Well, actually, everybody just want to ask some questions about some success stories, but I don't have not so much success in my entire life. So maybe 20% of success and 80% is a failure. So she asked me, and she specifically asked me, why you believe you failed it? What is the content of the failure? How did it happen? What do you think? So she asked me about the question in a very, very meaningful manner, in a very nice manner. So that I don't, it doesn't hurt my feelings. So it's very, very interesting how to ask a kind of difficult question to ask, but in a very, very, very nice manner. So it's very, very interesting to listen to her question. Then I start, starting going back and sorting out what is important, what was the cause of the problem. And when I answer something, then she asks another questions. So it's the power of questions to how to ask a good, efficient, effective questions. So I learned how to ask questions because I learned something from her questioning. So just that. So I learned a lesson from her, and I just use that skill to when I talk with my students. So I learned so many things.
Elizabeth, maybe I can sort of add on. So thank you, Mr. Yoshino. If you know, when we're looking back at the process of writing the book and working on the book, you know, we were doing purposeful interviews over 2 years ago, and then I started writing about, oh gosh, over a year and a half ago. But the part that really took the experience and the story that took the longest for us to partner together to unravel was the failure you're talking about, is the water ski boat business. That's the focus of really like the last sixth of the book. And how even just in March and April, as I was winding down like the final details of the book, some more information, like we were able to draw out some more information and richness, and was really this, it didn't all unfold, the telling of that experience in one go. It really was this partnership and over time and reflection. And it was really profound for me, Mr. Yoshino, to hear how you continued to reflect and how your experience of that failure appeared to change through the reflection process as well.
Well, I really would love to know, so this is, you had a lot of content, lots of information. Obviously, you know, hey, we should write a book, and that is amazing. What I want to know is, what was the biggest challenge for you in writing the book? What were you really wrestling with, if anything?
This one's for me on the writing. Yes. So, you know, so Mr. Yoshino and I started, I mean, our partnership this has always been the sort of the rhythm of our relationship from our very first meeting. I had just started writing my blog when I had moved to Japan in 2015, and Mr. Yoshino generously said that I could write about any reflections or anything he said to me was fair game to write about. And so, you know, I started writing these reflective blogs from our conversations. And about 2.5, 3 years ago, when we were talking, I'd already moved back to the US, and we were talking about maybe Isao, I think, actually said, maybe we should do a booklet. And I said, well, I think actually it's bigger than a booklet. Like, we're going to do this right. In my mind, though, I had this as sort of a book framed around leadership lessons. So, you know, the 10 leadership lessons, you know, ask questions, be humble, you know, whatever, maybe not 10. And then telling stories that sort of fit neatly or illuminated a certain lesson. And it was a year and a half. It was actually last summer where I pivoted. I'd been like working and writing our stories and the conversations. I was feeling really stuck. And what I realized through my being stuckness was that, and we all have this experience in our lives, that one experience doesn't sort of just have necessarily one lesson. Sometimes they do. There's some of those little vignettes that sort of like, you know, don't blame, that have, you know, sort of one primary lesson. But longer, more complex things in our lives, there are many lessons that can be learned. And what I thought was really interesting was, as I got to know Mr. Yoshino even more deeply through our conversations, was really his journey of learning to be a leader and a learner, and all of in the parts of Toyota's history. And I decided that it was really needed to happen and be told chronologically, not just from a historical perspective, because that's how we all learn. It's our experiences of learning from failure, learning from success, learning from others. And how do and once I sort of released from the previous framework that I had envisioned, then the writing flowed. And I was able to really focus on the stories. And that's when the warp and the weft concept came out as well. I remember telling Mr. Yoshino, I said, I really feel like there are two threads that have been constants in your life. One is around a real desire to live in the United States and have an international experience. And the others is really this deep sense of caring about other people, developing others, and developing yourself. And we started talking about this concept of warp and weft, and I knew that that's how I needed to tell the stories as well. And so it just sort of evolved, and it really is just like real true partnership with Mr. Yoshino and me, with me as the primary writer, but he's contributed so much in terms of the thinking and the structure. But that was the real pivot for me, when I was just, I was like, oh, I don't want to just write another like leadership 101 book. Like these are stories, and you can learn so much from stories, and they're not made up stories, they're real stories.
So before we move away from that point, just in case people haven't read the book, can you explain the warp and the weft analogy just briefly?
And actually I want to talk about this. Actually, is talk on the cover here is a hearkening to the warp and the weft. So warp and weft are concepts around a weaving. And actually, you know, Toyota, many people know that Toyota started as a weaving company before it was an automobile company. But the warp threads are these vertical threads that are laid down at the beginning, and they're strong and they're taut. And they, as Mr. Yoshino taught me in Japanese, you know, in Japanese culture, there's about this like having a strong desire to achieve a goal, a purpose, and achieving a vision. And then the weft threads are these ones that are interwoven that may not be as obvious or invisible. They're more discovered over time and incorporated into the pattern, and to create this richness of pattern. And I saw that for Mr. Yoshino, that was the things that he learned about learning and leading and failure and success. And so how can we have how can we have known goals and known things that are like a force within us and that really anchor our lives, like the foundation of the fabric? And then what are the things that we incorporate, that we discover, and how do those intertwine to create our real fabric of purpose?
Thank you, Katie, because I thought that was a really nice aspect of, you know, how you designed the flow of the book. So, and I want to come back to what you just said, which was the pivot turned you toward the stories, and Mr. Yoshino, you know, telling you the stories, and then you asking those questions, as he says, largely about failures and what he learned. And what was interesting to me, and I think it would be interesting to a lot of people, because Toyota is held up as, obviously that's where the Toyota way came from. This is the birth of lean manufacturing. And I think everyone just sort of assumes, well, it started, you know, early on, and it was part of the DNA, and it just grew. And the story about the CanPro program basically points out that in the 70s, there were problems. There was, you know, declining sales, there were quality problems, and leadership recognized, oh, it doesn't just, the DNA doesn't just happen. You actually have to be conscious and keep instilling good leadership practices, the problem-solving culture. It doesn't just happen. So you were a young leader then, Mr. Yoshino, and you had, and I'm going to make sure I pronounce your mentor's name wrong, excuse me, right. I want to pronounce it right, not wrong. It was Mr. Segura?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
So when he was your mentor, and you were part of that program to you know, rebuild and maintain that leadership culture, what do you think was in that program, what made the biggest difference to Toyota leadership?
Okay. Well, actually, it's not different, but it's a reinforcement of what all the managers or leaders have learned so far about reinforcement. Because, you know, it was around 78, 79. You know, Toyota has learned so many things, all the lean concept from Dr. Deming in the 60s. But 20 years is too long for us to keep it so vividly. So what people just, all the concept is fading away. And just like you said, the quality goes down. But Toyota, this is very important, because Toyota top management did not blame the workers in the plant for the bad, you know, the quality inferiority, quality problem. But instead, all the big shots, you know, discuss about it. Okay, it's not right to blame all the workers or blame on the manufacturing plant, but maybe it's our leadership management system, something we have to do something about it. So what they decided that we have to relearn. After 20 years, so many things happen, but we need to find out whether we have changed, you know, as the world is changing. So we have to relearn what we have learned, what we have forgotten. So that's how the people came up with some relearning program. Then my mentor, Mr. Segura, and his big boss, Mr. Nemoto, just decided maybe, you know, actually, Big Shot just asked Mr. Nemoto and Mr. Sugiura, and you guys develop something to for the senior managers to learn all the key concepts. Then Mr. Sugiura just had a big thought and just maybe it's currently Noryuk program, and it's a long title, and it's retraining the senior managers, not the workers, not the frontline people working to make the cars, but leadership. So it's not a skill, but it's a way of thinking, or mindset, or people oriented mindset, or those leadership are focused. So that is the power of a Compro. So it's not a skill or technique that the people learned, but not skill, but way of thinking. So it's something in you, not on your hands, but something in your brain and in your attitude. So that is the power of Compro program, and which no other company has ever tried that before. And I don't know whether I answered your question, but that is what surprised me so much. And I was so lucky to be involved in that training team.
Yeah, no, that's clear. And you did answer my question. I think the focus on the mindset and the fact that was surprising to you was that the focus was completely on leadership, that this was not a frontline problem and not addressed at that level. So yeah, thank you. That was obviously pivotal.
Something that we add in the book was a story that even was new to Mr. Yoshino when the last time he met with Mr. Sugiura, probably 6 months ago or something in person, visited him on the train and was actually asking him, and Mr. Sugiura is about 10 years older than Mr. Yoshino. He's still alive, and was asking him some questions about that time. And I remember you telling the story, which I included as a box because I thought it was so interesting about the senior executives, so the president and his direct reports, talking about how they were going to structure the program and what divisions and what departments should be included. And they ultimately decided that all leadership needed to be included because everybody has responsibility for quality, not just the production, the shop floor, manufacturing group, everyone as well. And I thought that was really powerful. And you did too. You're like, whoa, this was really important.
Yes. I have a question for both of you. I'd love to hear what your answers are from your different perspectives. So Mr. Yoshino, what do you think there's a fundamental difference in Western leadership versus the Toyota leadership? And
yes and no, but I don't know what fundamental means. But from my own experience working for more than 10 years in the United States, closely together with American people, and major difference is that most of the big decision is made by upper management people, and the people working for him or for her just follow what they are told to do. So that is basically what is not that strict, but that is what I observed, particularly in the Toyota Motor Sales Company where I spent 10 years over there. So but it's vertical, communication is strong, and also the people do what they are told to do by their bosses. But within Toyota, it's so different. Of course, people are working on their own work. However, the communication between bosses and subordinates, also between horizontally with other divisions, it's very, very intense and also very, very common. And so the management style is so different. Also, the Toyota style is very flexible, and also a kind of a sense of respect exists over there. But when we say respect, it's slightly different from the casual meaning of respect. It's not something that you look up to somebody, but it's not respect. And respect within Toyota is the same level, but you have to, humanity is a key thing. So that is one of the things, kind of fundamental different.
yes,
And from maybe Western style. So if you ask me whether that is fundamental, I think it is fundamental, and it is not good or bad, but that is what has been passed down from one generation to another. But
Yes.
within Toyota, that's oh oh maybe bird is singing out there.
Oh, that's
I'm sorry.
okay.
Um. Anyway, so that is there are some. Looks like it's a small thing, but it's not a small thing that made Toyota different from other companies.
Mhm.
So it's so important to look about our core policy, core concept of running the company.
Mhm. What would you say to that, Katie? What, and you're a leadership coach, so I'm sure that there's certain things you're doing more often in Western leadership. What would you say to that question about differences?
You know, most of my experience is from, you know, this 5.5 years ago when I moved to Japan and got to have this incredible immersive experience. And then since then, going to visit all of these Japanese companies and as well as working with Mr. Yoshino. Something that really strikes me is that a lot of people assume that, you know, Toyota leadership and the Toyota way is synonymous with Japanese leadership. And that's not necessarily true.
Mm.
There are some qualities that are more, you know, that are built on the, you know, Japanese management and Japanese culture. You know, as you both know from visiting the school and seeing this threat for waste and respect for community and respect for people and how that's really built into the Japanese culture. But there are other things that Toyota did and brought from, they went and studied the United States and brought some concepts over. And I really feel like Toyota did something different than other Japanese companies and created a culture. And Mr. Yoshino, you've talked about this too, that Toyota's culture is not the same as some of these other big Japanese companies that maybe had origins more in Tokyo or the city. That there's something really special about the place in which Toyota was birthed in the Mikawa region, outside of Nagoya, in the countryside. And how these concepts of this more like sort of country aspect came about. And then when I look at sort of my experience of working with leaders in the West, I'd say we try and label things too much. We focus on the tools. We focus on, there's no word lean in Japan. Like if I go say, oh, what are some companies practicing lean, or even the Toyota way, people say, well, it's only Toyota's practicing the Toyota way. That's the Toyota way. There is no, we try and describe things and then copy it exactly, but we miss the fundamentals. And so, you know, what I think is so powerful about Mr. Yoshino's stories is talks about the fundamentals. It's about the principles. It's about the principles behind the thinking. The quote that I start the book with is that from Mr. Yoshino, is the only secret to Toyota is its attitude towards learning. And I really feel like that's a fundamental difference between Toyota and many other companies. They've gone and learned from the US. They've learned from their own Japanese culture. They've learned what's worked for them. And they continue to create and develop people along this chain of learning. And we just focus on the tools too much and try and apply that without really looking at what does it mean to learn. And then that's where the title comes from, learning to lead and leading to learn. It's about all of these things. It's really about creating a learning organization, and Toyota's excelled at that.
You remind me of something that happened on our tour that I wasn't prepared for that makes that point. And when we were in Japan in May of last year, and part of the tour went to Ina Foods. And that was where they manufactured, I think it's
Content.
It's algae based, but and could be anything. There was food additives. I saw them make a form of saran wrap. Anyway, that was a whole other fascinating thing. And the book that the chairman wrote was amazing, Tree Ring Management. But what I wasn't prepared for was I found out that Toyota had been sending leaders there to learn from him and to learn from that culture. And that to me spoke volumes about what you're saying, that, so a learning culture, it's not just, oh, we're learning, we're reinforcing the Toyota way. It's like, no, they're still learning. They're still going out there to see what is happening and what is working elsewhere. So that was profound.
Akio Toyoda, on the cover of the chairman of Ina Foods' new book, it says, "My textbook," written in Japanese. So, you know, he's learning from them about having a long-term vision and creating this culture of respect. Actually, Mr. Yoshino and I were talking about it in Mr. Toyoda's year-end speech, or end of financial year speech. He was talking about how Toyota, he says, Toyota's mission now is to create happiness. And that's exactly what
That's
the chairman of
Ina
Ina,
Foods.
their purpose is happiness. And I have to think he learned from his sensei. And so I thought that was really beautiful and interesting as well. And I just want to piggyback too on that concept. That it's something that Mr. Yoshino's talked about, this chain of learning that he participated in at his time in Toyota, and how I love that phrase that you used, Mr. Yoshino, about you discovered that there really was this true chain of learning at Toyota, and how you learned from others and then you brought that forward. And that's part of what this book is as well.
Yeah, well, you know, I love that expression, chain of learning, because I learned so many things from my mentor, and Mr. Suguru, and also my first kacho, which is a section manager, Mr. Tamura. I learned so many things from them. One of the things I learned so much is that, you know, that to help people, help your subordinate to learn something, and do your best and do some and provide extra efforts to train your people. So that is one of the first things I learned from when I joined Toyota when I was younger. So now I'm still teaching in my universities, and I keep asking myself why I keep coming back to the university, even though I get paid only one day, one class a week, but still I used to go there every single day from Monday through Friday and late. So why am I doing this? And I don't know the answer, but it's part of my character, because I was educated, I was trained, and to be of some help if I can do something to them. And I can see so many things that I would like to help my students. So it is a kind of tradition just came, you know, passed from one generation to another. So that's still I'm doing what I've been given, what the assistant or the help that I've been given. I'm now trying to pay back, not to Toyota people, but to the younger generation people. So that's kind of tradition of Toyota, and it's not written anywhere, but it's passed down, and because it's a people working, and you know, higher managers don't do the work. The people, their subordinates do the work. So managers should always take care that people feel happy doing that, and with a big smile, you know, when it's come to the office and start working, and then leave the office with a satisfaction. So that is so important, very, very basic, but that is very important role for managers to play. And so, but it is the one thing that it's not, cannot be changed over generations, because it's a very, very core a concept. It's passing down from one generation to another.
What I would love to know, Katie, is, I mean, so much knowledge, and the fact that you have such a good relationship with Mr. Yoshino, and you've heard all these stories. How have you incorporated these learnings into your business? Like when you help other organizations or leaders, what are you finding that you're carrying forward as part of these? Is there anything specific that you've carried forward that you really make a point to bring up and help people learn?
That's a great question. You know, I don't think there's so much richness of learning that I have had the pleasure to participate in through this 5.5 years of friendship with Mr. Yoshino.
Oh, did she freeze?
Yep.
It stopped.
Darn it. I think we lost.
Oh, you're back. Okay, you froze, Katie.
Okay.
You're gonna have to answer that again.
Let's start again.
Thank God we can do the pre-record and cut that out. Okay, so just start from the beginning.
My internet's unstable. That's so
Don't
strange.
forget to say that's a good question. So that's how you started last time.
Okay. Here, we'll try again. So thanks, Tracy. It's a really great question. And, it's hard to answer it in any one way because I've been so fortunate to have this incredibly rich experience over the last 5.5 years of a relationship with Mr. Yoshino, and not just learning from him about his experiences and his wisdom and his knowledge of 40 plus years at Toyota, but also the learning we've had through discussion together. And it's hard to say like any one thing that I bring forward, because I think it's all just become part of who I am and how I show up. And I mean, I guess if I could take a moment and say there's probably two things. One is that I just have this richness of experience that I would never have had before having this relationship with Mr. Yoshino. And that is one of the reasons I wanted to write this book, so that other people had the opportunity to learn in the same way that I have and carry forward. And the second is, I guess, really the real power of reflection, of the concept of Hansei. And I always knew, I've known that reflection and self-reflection is very important, but how that practice and how partnering together with others can really allow us to learn things on a much deeper level. And how do we connect with a sense of purpose for ourselves? And then how do we align our behaviors? And I've come to call that intentional leadership, or even living and leading with intention. How do we really understand what our purpose is in life, the things that might be known and the things that we discover along the way? And how do we show up more and have more recognition of how we're behaving and how we're showing up to help other people and to fulfill our own purpose as well? And I don't know if that's anything that came out of specifically like something I learned from Mr. Yoshino, but it's just been part of my journey for the last 5.5 years that can't be separated from this incredible relationship and conversations that we've had together.
I was going to guess that too. Like if you said, I don't know, I think I would have said in my head, I would pick Hansei, because you do live it. When we went on the Japanese study tour, we had reflections every day. We actually participated in your coaching sessions, and that was a part of it. A big part of it was reflection. And so I would say yes, but I wanted to see if that's what you thought.
And so actually that was the working title for the book, was Practicing Hansei, because I feel like the higher level of this book is really this concept of reflection and looking back and relearning and learning more. And so that's why I also, instead of I pivoted and we called it Learning to Lead, Leading to Learn, but the concept of Hansei is so important that we have reflection questions at the end of each chapter. So help, I wanted to, these aren't just don't just hear Mr. Yoshino's stories, but how do you reflect and what do they mean to you as well? And how are they going to help you become a better person and a better leader?
Yes.
So,
thank you.
Yeah, no, I think that I understood why that was the original title. I like where it is now, but I know that, as you know, the reflection, you altered Tracy's and my approach to our own practices that now include a lot of reflection. Yeah.
And my relationship with my son.
Yay, I know, that's so great.
That was my coaching. My reflection was focused on improving my relationship with my teenager. So that was wonderful.
So I have a different reflection question for you, Mr. Yoshino, and that is, so I know it's part of the driving force in your life, and it comes through with your conversations with Katie, to travel and to get to the US. And I know that when your first job here wasn't exactly what you had in mind, but just, and obviously there were more learnings and more stories of your time here. But we've talked a lot about culture and, Toyota culture and what's different about Western leadership. But I want to know, what do you miss most about living in the US? What do you miss most about US culture?
When you miss, what does that mean? That something is missing, or something good?
Longing for.
Okay.
The things that you had, that when you think about, yeah.
Okay, so good things or bad things, or
good things about.
Oh, okay. Well, actually, the good things about American culture is that you were not you, but American people are very open to come up with your opinion if you discuss something. So it helps us to think about how we are too humble, and we just try not to speak up so often, so openly, because we expect people understand what I'm thinking, and we know that, okay, this guy is thinking this way, even though we don't even ask them. So, but we have to change, because we are the only nation in the entire world that we expect somebody else to find out what I'm thinking. So we have to open up, and we have to express our own opinion. And that is one of the things I learned so much during my stay in the United States. And so that is one of the many things that I'm coaching my students. Actually, no, last night, last night, I sent a long email to my partner in my university that, I wanted to just, coach my students to speak up and to come up with the opinion, good or bad, doesn't matter. But they just keep silent entire 90 minutes. That is no good. So, and that is one of the things I learned from my own experience. And so there are so many good things about American culture that we have to even still, we have to learn still now. And so it's very simple, but so it's not necessarily Toyota, but it's about Japanese people. So that's why I still want to, keep my position in my university, because I want to just keep contact with my students and influence in some way, and to train or to help them to learn some core concept, not necessarily lean, but something I learned, the openness and the positive attitude of American people. That is one of the things I wanted to share with my students. And so it's never ending journey for me. And because, it's a business world, and the school class is so different, but still the key concept to learn something important is the same. So that is one of the reasons why I stick to my part-time teacher, and I'm enjoying it very, very much. I still keep receiving a lot of email from my students, even though this coronavirus, we don't meet each other, but they send me a question, then send me asking some help how to do that, because they are now working on a new job. 4-year students that started to get a job and interviews, they need some help from me. So, and so that is, maybe they need a person like me. So it's never ending journey for me, and to help somebody if they need some help from me.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful.
Thank
you. Well, we're coming up to the end of our time together, which is really a bummer. And so I was just wondering if you had anything else you wanted to share, and open it up and see if there's anything you wanted to share.
Me or Katie or
either
me?
Yeah, either of you. Did you want to share anything else with our audience, or any last sentiments?
Well, not so much, but if people just read that, and it's all the book and all the content, most of the content are my failure story. But the most important thing is I learned so many good lessons out of my failure. So it's a failure is not simply failure, but failure and together with not success, but learning, new learning. So we talk about Hansei, but Hansei is very, very important. When you do something, and but we don't forget to review it. But doing review thing is very important. It's the power of finding something good out of the failure, out of something to improve. So reviewing something or Hansei or a check process among a PDCA process is so important. That's what I'm doing even now. And so that is one of the things that I would like to see among the readers of this book. That is one of the main topics that I would like to focus on. And but well, actually, it's a great experience for me to go back, and receiving lots of questions from Katie, and then dig down more. So it's another review, another Hansei, and another reflections. So PDCA and check action is the most important thing in our life. And I'm still doing that in my private life too.
Mm-hmm. Oh, thank you. I want to give you a hug.
I have two things. One is some as a gift for your listeners. So for those of you who don't know, I love Daruma dolls, and Darumas are these little, well, they could be big too. I have some big ones, but this is around the concept of goals and setting goals. And when you have a goal, you fill in the Daruma's left eye, and then you can fill in the right eye when you achieve your goal. And it's about perseverance and falling down 7 times, getting up 8. And for people in the United States, at least, who can submit to be one of the winners of each, I'll send out 3 different Darumas. And so it'll be KBJ Anderson / Go Lean Six Sigma. And we'll put that into the notes as well. And we'll have the giveaway go for 2 weeks after the podcast, so people can go in. So, and you'll see little Daruma dolls throughout the book as well. But I want to end actually, we started talking about how I ask a lot of questions and questions to help stimulate reflection. Maybe that is my mission in life. But I have a question for both of you. I'm going to flip the interview quickly. And what is one thing that you have taken away, Elizabeth and Tracy, each of you separately, from your learning from me and Mr. Yoshino, either through our book or through your time with us in Japan and living together? So I'll leave that at that. What's one thing that you are taking away in your life?
Only one? We only can say one?
You could say many, many, many things, but for the purpose of this event, what is one thing?
Yes. Did you want to go first, Elizabeth, or do you want me to?
I'll go first.
Okay.
So one of the biggest things for me, and this came out of the book, obviously, as I mentioned, reflection is now a part of my daily life, but the thing that helped me listening to your stories, Mr. Yoshino, and to Katie's reflection questions was to embrace failure more. That, as you say, is where learning comes from. And it's, I think, a part of at least the culture I was raised in was to, avoid mistakes and to not embrace failure and try to sidestep it, avoid it, keep it quiet. So I think that it helped me look it more straight in the eye and also use those reflection questions. So that helped me a lot. So I thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I just finished the book, literally, probably, I don't know, an hour ago, maybe, before this interview. I was like, oh, I gotta finish this. So something really resonated with me, and a lot of it has to do with where I am in my life right now. And so, you know how sometimes you see a movie when you were young, and then you see it again when you're older, and it has a different meaning? And so, for example, I don't know if you're familiar with the movie Risky Business with Tom Cruise from the 80s, but I thought that movie was so cool in the 80s because I was in high school. Well, I actually saw it again a month ago, but now I have a son who's in high school, and it has a totally different meaning for me now. And so I'll admit, not a lot of people admit this, but I'm in my 50s now, and what I'm finding is I'm becoming less tolerant of things. And, I tend to sort of kind of blow things off that I shouldn't, or just, have an opinion of, I'm not doing that. So what really resonated for me in this book was when Mr. Yoshino got the job in San Francisco, and it wasn't something he really wanted to do. And he really needed to change his attitude about that job. And he just said he was going to be the best gopher ever for anything. And it kind of hit me because, it just made me realize that I can't just shut things down because I don't feel like it, or, that I don't want to address it or judge it so quickly. And, if you change your attitude, you can really, it can be everything, all the difference. So that really struck me a lot. I've had a lot of lessons from both of you, and I'm very appreciative of this friendship. I'm very humble. I'm so grateful that you I got a chance to talk with you again. But that was the most recent lesson I've had an hour ago. So
Thanks for the questions, Katie. Those are good.
So thank you. So I am going to share my screen because I have a little surprise as well. So I actually found some photos of our time last year in May together. I was looking for a photo for all four of us, but I ran across all of these fun photos of us, different places and doing different things. So I just wanted to share that as a wonderful memory of our time spent together.
Oh, so great.
And
I'm so sad. No travel right now.
We'll travel again.
I know. And what a great, we had such a great group last year, and I'm so, what special relationships were built.
It was, and what an experience. I mean, I'll shamelessly plug you for this amazing experience, and I would, if anyone can go, I would go. I'm hoping I get to go again someday. Yeah. So anyways, I just wanted to share that with you, and just thank everybody for joining us, especially the two of you. I'm so excited for your book, and don't forget to go to kbjanderson.com to win your Daruma dolls.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you guys want to say? Anything else you want to say?
Thank you everyone for being part of this journey and allowing, I feel so fortunate to have become part of Mr. Yoshino's chain of learning, and now through me get to share with you too all of his lessons of learning and leading. So I look forward to hearing all of your reflections based on what you're learning from Mr. Yoshino's many years of experience at Toyota and wisdom and our shared reflections. So thank you so much.
Thank you both.
Thank you both. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.